Hopefully by now you're aware of the fact that Bill O'Reilly, host on Fox News, like Brian Williams, is embroiled in a scandal over lies that he has apparently told about his time covering foreign wars. Now, we're a few days into this scandal, and tons more evidence is being unearthed, which I'm going to cover here. And the reason I'm covering this is it is already feeling to me like this story is going to be brushed under the rug. I thought that was a possibility with Brian Williams, but it didn't happen. He took himself off the air after apologizing, and he is now gone. But I'm getting the feeling that Bill O'Reilly is going to weather this. But let's show you what he has to weather at the very least. So, we do know that he has said that he covered the Falkland War, but he did it from Buenos Aires, 1,200 miles away from the actual war zone. But in multiple times that he said he was covering the war, he said he covered it in a war zone, that he was in combat situations, which we know is not true. He covered a couple of riots that happened. Now, he says they were incredibly violent. People were being gunned down by the army. Although we know that from the reports from CBS at the time, there are no reports of any casualties. It was simply a riot. It was a protest that went on. But we also know that there was one story that Bill O'Reilly told about his time in Buenos Aires that certainly stood out. And it was that at some point his photographer was either hit in the head or tripped and hit his head. In any event, he suffered a head injury of some kind. And Bill O'Reilly was struck with, well, God, I have to save the tape. Okay, I'll save the guy. And that's his retelling of the story. But regardless, he ends up saving his cameraman, which is fairly heroic, I suppose. He says the army is chasing him at that time. Again, this is not in the Falklands. This is in Buenos Aires. And I knew that was where he had fucked up in talking about his photographer falling. Because that is a person. That person can be interviewed, and we can find out what actually happened there. And while they haven't yet tracked down the photographer, they haven't actually gotten a report with him as of what I've seen. They have talked, CNN has, with 7 different people who were there for CBS covering that exact protest. And they all have the same story. Bill O'Reilly is lying in multiple elements of the story that he has been telling now for 30-something years. First of all, his basically slanderous accusation that everyone else was too scared to cover it, and he was the only one brave enough to go out and cover the protest. Completely not true. Multiple different reporters for CBS are now saying that they were out and that no one was hiding in the hotel. So, again, understand, we're going to make multiple comparisons to Brian Williams, because understand Brian Williams has lost his job. Brian Williams told a story about soldiers being heroic. No one was a coward in Brian Williams' story. Nobody was besmirched in Brian Williams' story. But Bill O'Reilly is throwing people under the bus. Automatically worse than Brian Williams in that regard. But now he also lays out that he is a hero. Brian Williams only said that he was in a vehicle that was shot at. He never said that he did anything heroic. He was simply there. But Bill O'Reilly is saying that under fire from the army, he saved a man's life. Not true at all. They talked with 7 different people. They've said it was not a war zone or even close. It was an expense account zone. One man said that it was the cushiest war he'd ever covered. That's longtime NBC News correspondent George Lewis. The cushiest war he ever covered. But for Bill O'Reilly, this has been the foundation for him to attack people who come on his show, to cut off their mics, to say, I've covered wars with a pen. I've been in this shit. I have credibility. If I want to say that we should go to war, I'm not a bloviator. I've actually been there. But now we're finding out it was an expense account war. It was the cushiest war people had ever covered. He has been lying this entire time. Now, specifically about the photographer's injury, they talked with 7 different people there at the time. No one remembers anyone being injured. And they specifically say that if someone had been injured at that time, they would of course known that. We also know, by the way, that there were no dead bodies, no one was gunned down, or at the very least, no one saw anyone get gunned down, including Bill O'Reilly. So we have the actual violence that's supposed to make it so much more action-packed and so interesting, totally not true. We have him being heroic and saving a man's life. Totally not true. So understand, like, Brian Williams both didn't attack anyone with his story, and if he was blowing up his own reputation, it was just to seem like he had been in an interesting situation. And afterward, he didn't then use it to push for sending other people to go into foreign countries and to die for whatever reason. But Bill O'Reilly both besmirched the reputation of other people still working in this industry, by the way, same as him. He used it to say that he is himself a hero as if he was in the military, and he has gone on to use it to lobby for more wars, for more deaths, both of Americans and Iraqis, Syrians, name a country, he's probably advocating for people dying in it. And for some reason, Brian Williams is the man who lost his job. Now understand, at the time I said Brian Williams shouldn't lose his job, and if we found out that if a conservative had made a lie like this, they shouldn't lose their job either for that reason. And I stand by that. Bill O'Reilly should not lose his job because he lied about covering the Falkland Wars. But if the media is going to chastise one reporter for doing so, I feel like they should probably be consistent between the two. And if Bill O'Reilly was to lose his job, this wouldn't necessarily have to be the reason. There are far better reasons, as Jimmy Dore laid out on the Young Turks. He has been a liar. He has been a racist. He has misconstrued every scientific finding that he's talked about on his show, including whether or not the tides are affected by the moon. He doesn't seem to understand that. He lies about climate change. He lies about the police. In every issue that affects human lives domestically and foreignly, he has lied for multiple decades. And if this is the one lie that we can actually peg on him, that we have proof that he lied, and that the media actually seems primed to actually care about right now, then fine, I'm willing to run with that. But I don't think that it's going to happen. I think that we're already seeing less coverage of this. There has been the reports of people following up, like CNN, interviewing reporters and photographers and sound engineers at the time in the Falklands, or I should say in Buenos Aires, 1,200 miles away from the Falklands. And yet the mainstream media doesn't seem to care for some reason. They cared about Brian Williams, but for some reason with Bill O'Reilly, they don't. Mediaite's a site that I sometimes have to go to because they basically curate media footage. They're fairly conservatively biased, but I go there from time to time. And they had an essay about this saying, you know, every time I hear about Bill O'Reilly being a liar, I can't help but think about motive. Why are they attacking him like this? Which is interesting for two reasons. One, because when they were doing multiple articles and videos about Brian Williams, they didn't often talk about the motive and how significant it was at that time. But when it's attacking a conservative, motive suddenly matters. And then they're talking about how it's a personal attack. I don't care what David Corn's reasons for listing these facts are. The listing of the lies that Bill O'Reilly has told is irrelevant. If David Corn is lying, then it becomes relevant. But we've moved so far past that. Mother Jones did great research and writing and reporting to get this story out there, but now it is a story, and it has to stand on the facts, and Bill O'Reilly is a goddamn liar. We know that. It doesn't matter if David Corn did it because he doesn't like Bill O'Reilly's haircut, or because he once hit on Bill O'Reilly and Bill O'Reilly didn't reciprocate. It doesn't freaking matter what the reason is. Bill O'Reilly is a liar, and there should be some consequences for that. But there aren't going to be consequences because there's a major difference between Brian Williams reporting that he did up until a few weeks ago and Bill O'Reilly's. When people tune into Brian Williams, they expect to be told the facts. They expect to be told the truth. They expect to be, for the most part at least, respected. But does anyone actually have that sort of expectation for Bill O'Reilly anymore? I don't mean liberals like me. I mean conservatives who actually tune in. Do they tune in thinking, I'm going to have the truth exposed to me tonight, and I'm going to have a better understanding of what's actually going on in America, what's actually going on in the world? I don't think that they have that belief. I think that they go in because they're used to it, because they like the sound of his insane voice, because he strokes their egos and he reassures them that all the terrible things they believe about the world are true. And that can be done while lying constantly. Bill O'Reilly's made a career on it. What's one more lie? And so I'm predicting at this point that there are going to be no consequences. I don't just mean that he's not going to lose his job. No consequences whatsoever for Bill O'Reilly because he's a conservative and they can lie about the military, they can lie about warfare, they can lie about soldiers if they want to. Libs can't. Conservatives can. And because it's Fox News. And they don't give a goddamn about the truth.